Hi, it's Netiva, and this is Lesson 8, Steps to Improving Your Credit Long Term. And this lesson will review the 5 components that make up your scores with specific tips on how to improve and maintain your credit scores for the long haul. When improving your credit long term, it's important to focus on the main parts that make up your credit scores. So we'll focus on FICO for this section because it dominates over 90% of the marketplace. So when creditors are pulling your credit scores, FICO is the score that they are relying on. And there are 5 parts that make up a FICO score. So number 1 is payment history, which accounts for 35% of our FICO scores. Number 2 is amount owed, which accounts for 30% of our FICO scores. Number 3 is the length of age, which is the age of our credit report history, and that accounts for 15% of our FICO scores. Number 4 is new credit, which is 10% of our FICO scores. And then number 5 is credit mix, which is 10% of our FICO scores. So let's dig in a little bit deeper. So my first tip is to pay on time every time. Payment history accounts for 35% of our FICO scores, so that means it holds the most weight and is the biggest chunk of our scores. So despite any negative history that happened in the past, new positive activity carries more weight than anything we did some years back. So paying on time every time has a huge impact on our credit scores now and for the long haul. The second tip is to keep our balances low. The amount owed section accounts for 30% of our FICO scores, and utilization has the most weight. So 30% means that it holds just as much weight as payment history. And credit cards hold the most weight in this particular area. The credit scoring system looks at how much you owe on the credit cards, and then it compares that to the amount of the credit card limits that are on those cards. The closer you get to your credit limits on those cards, the lower your score will be. So if you want to have this factor weighed strongly in your favor, here are the measures that you will want to take to master this. Number 1, make sure that you know the credit limits on all of your cards and don't let the balance on any of those cards climb higher than 25%. So for example, if you have a $1,000 credit card limit, do not spend more than $250 on this card. Tip number 3, keep older accounts open. FICO loves antiques, and if you recall, length of age is 15% of our credit scores. What this looks at is how old is your oldest account and what is the average age of all of your accounts. So as long as this account is positive and it's open, keep it open and just use it periodically, and that way you will master the 15% area of your FICO scores. Tip number 4, new credit. Remember, that's 10% of your credit scores, okay? I'm just going to pause between each tip. Tip number 4, new credit. You want to add positive accounts sparingly. So I've left a summary of the credit card terms and tips on selecting accounts based on your credit score range, because as you're rebuilding, you don't want to incur a lot of inquiries when deciding which accounts to add on based on your current credit standing. And remember, this is 10% of your credit score, so you really want to work on keeping inquiries to an absolute minimum. Tip number 5, credit mix. The credit scoring system looks favorably on variety, and as we saw on the bulleted list, credit mix only accounts for 10% of your credit scores. But your credit score will be marginally higher if you happen to have more than one type of credit on your credit report and have been good at managing it successfully. My rule of thumb is to have 3 revolving types of credit, which are credit cards, and 1 installment loan. Tip number 6, create a budget and live below your means. Doing this will ensure you are never late on payments and that you can keep your utilization well below the 25% recommended. Tip number 7, use technology. You want to keep your bills current, and it helps to automate as many payments as possible to ensure that you pay them regularly. This way you'll never forget to pay those bills and your credit will always be protected. Tip number 8, review your credit card bills and bank statements monthly. You want to review your credit card and bank statements and compare the purchases that you've made to make sure that they are 100% accurate. If you notice any unfamiliar items on your credit card statements or even your bank statements, you want to immediately contact your provider and determine whether you've been a victim of identity fraud. And then tip number 9, you want to pull your credit reports regularly and review them for the 4 areas. You want to make sure they are 100% complete, 100% accurate, 100% verifiable, and 100% timely. Tip number 9, once you reach the 700s, consider identity theft protection. A victim of identity theft happens every 2 seconds. So with a more desirable credit score, you're more at risk. So protect yourself early to avoid headaches later on. So I hope these tips have been valuable enough to put you on the right track to repairing, restoring, and rebuilding your credit scores.